What's up, game players? I'm here with Paul, and he owns a law firm. He's part of a law firm where they specialize in syndications. And Paul, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell us a little bit more about your firm?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My firm is based out of Cleveland, Ohio. And when you do work like syndications, which is just stacking up other people's money to pay for something that you can't pay for yourself, you can do that all over the country because it's actually federal law. So we help entrepreneurs buy big things like apartment buildings or storage facilities or new businesses or existing businesses. And we do that with some exemptions from the Securities and Exchange Commission. And all that really means is I put a bunch of paperwork together for you, and then we make sure that you're compliant. So.
One part of being compliant is registering your business at the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, right?
That's right.
And that is part of the government, correct?
Yep, that's a federal government requirement. That's right.
Right. You know, in the Hispanic community, sadly, and I see it all over also with anybody, but honestly, I see it a lot in the Hispanic community where people raise money from multiple investors that are not accredited and they're not even registered. Can you tell us the things that you're not allowed to do?
Yeah, so what you're not allowed to do is raise money from people where they're going to expect to make passive money on your hard work if they don't have an exemption. So if you raised from one person and you put a mortgage on the property, that's okay. You don't have to call, you don't have to let the SEC know about that. But if you're raising from two or more people, you have to really consider whether or not you got to do the SEC compliance because you are selling a security at that point. People are giving you money, expecting a profit on that money for doing no work themselves. You're putting all the work in. So, yeah, it happens a lot. I mean, I've worked with folks that have been doing this for 30 years, and this is the first syndication they've ever done because they didn't know what they were doing was wrong.
Yeah.
And many times it's okay because people get away with it because the deal works out, right? But if it doesn't work out, that's the risk, and that's where lots of people get in trouble.
And real estate is very risky. I have seen a lot of lawsuits where, frauds do happen. They're real. A lot of people get scammed. And other times they don't really have a bad intention, but they were ignorant and they didn't do it right. And then the person that raised the capital the wrong way finds themselves in a really tough position. It's very risky, not worth it, in my opinion. How are they not supposed to solicit funds?
Sure. So that's the thing is you don't want to ask people for money until you disclose all the risks of the deal. And that's what this paperwork really does. It talks about if you're doing a new build in Columbia, South Carolina, and you don't tell people that, hey, we could lose everything. Like if we're in the middle of a 25 single family development and all of a sudden the market takes a tank and there's no one buying, everyone's going to lose their money or at least lose a lot of their money. So you, if you're soliciting investors that you don't know, you have to do this paperwork that we've talked a little bit about called syndication.
Right. And also the Private Placement Memorandum, right?
That's right. Yeah, that is the big document that talks about all the risks of the deal. So if it's a new construction project, if it's a value add project, that's where you talk about that you're going to, compete with other similar developments. You have the risk of contractors maybe not doing their job like they're supposed to. That's where you disclose all the risks of a real estate project. So your investors will at least be given the opportunity to look at a project with open eyes and understand the risks before they give you the money.
Right. I really do appreciate your insight on this because I just see so many people out there who just don't know. And sadly, a lot of public speakers are spreading a lot of misinformation, and they go out to these conferences and they're constantly telling people that it's just okay to raise money from multiple people without taking all the proper steps
Sure.
to protect your project, but also protect the investors.
That's right. Yeah. And do people do it and get away with it? Yes, but that's not a good way of doing business, because if you do, unfortunately, sometimes people's first deal is their last deal because
Yeah.
they really don't know what they're doing. And the internet is great because you can learn so much so fast, but it also, you can learn too much too fast, and sometimes think that you've figured out a way to get around the system, or you have money to invest and you get excited about somebody's video and it turns out they really don't know what they're doing. So having a really good mentor help you understand kind of the steps that you should be taking on your own learning journey, and also doing things the right way is a good long-term strategy for sure.
I really do appreciate this, because I actually a lot of content around this, and I tell people the right way to do things, but I really wanted my audience to hear it from an attorney. So it's not just me saying it.
Sure.
It's someone that has the credentials to provide proper information to us.
Yeah. Happy to share. And a lot of these principles we're talking about, it's very common sense, right? When you take a step back and you're like, well, you have a friend that has a good chunk of money that's looking to invest, but what do they really know? These documents give them the opportunity to really understand that although it's an asset-backed investment, right? Because you could, in all likelihood, you won't go down to zero with an investment like you might actually be able to do in a stock or one of these crypto opportunities. But you can lose a lot on someone's bad, either mismanagement or bad management. So yeah, just got to be careful.
I get a question for you. When I raise money, I typically just put a promissory note that is then turned into a private mortgage that is recorded in public records.
Sure.
We also provide policy insurance to our lenders. Is that something you can do when you raise from multiple investors?
Yeah, so you can do that. The problem becomes every state is a first to record state. So what some people do is they have like an LLC that would be the mortgage or note holder. And then there's a bunch of people in that LLC that are ultimately getting their money protected by that mortgage. The problem is that itself is a security. So when you're doing any more than one person to lien that property, you're now in a security situation. You should be thinking about it. You can do multiple mortgages, but if you're the person given the money, you want to make sure your mortgage is first, because that's the most protected, right?
Right.
The second through fifth or 10th or whatever it might be, when you get to the back of that line, it'd be very unlikely for you to get much, if any, of your money back. So that's a problem with using a bunch of notes and a bunch of mortgages, is that somebody.
Well, we've never done that. Typically, I just work with one investor per project.
That's great. Yep. That's how you should do it.
Yeah, but if you were syndicating funds per se, can you also protect their investment?
That's right. So you would do what we do for a lot of folks, a debt fund, which is we get 10 people to put $25,000 in. You have $250,000 as a pool of money. That fund would lend that money to the borrower that's building the house or whatever it is, and then that fund would have the mortgage. So all 10 people's money would be protected by that single mortgage, and that's how you want to do it.
Awesome. That is so awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. Just one more question, because I just get this a lot. A lot of people also think that you don't have to syndicate if you can just go straight again to multiple investors, solicit their funds, and push the idea to basically create a partnership like an LLC or LLP, and they think they can get away with it. That is completely fine. I had heard from a different attorney that you cannot do that because that's basically syndicating.
That's right.
Finding a way around it, and eventually you'll get in trouble.
Yeah. So what people like to call that is a JV or a joint
Yeah.
venture, where they just have people, hey, we got 12 people involved, but only 2 of the 12 are actually doing any of the work. Yes, that's a syndication. Just understand that, like, your idea of getting around the paperwork has been thought of probably 75 years ago when the act actually was created. So if you're raising any sort of significant money, reach out to America. She'll set up a call with me, and we can just walk through if it makes sense to do. Now, if you're, I know a lot of things come into play, right? Like if you're only raising $100,000, but you're getting it from 10 different people, you're thinking, well, do I really have to spend, a large chunk of that 10 to syndicate the deal and do the paperwork properly? Well, it's something that you want to talk to an attorney about, so they can kind of walk you through that. So in that scenario, yes, it's a security, and yes, there's risk to those investors. But could you pay that $100,000 back to those 10 investors? You probably could. It would take you a while, right? It would take you a couple of successful projects, but you are in a securities situation. And if I were you, I would work harder on finding that 100 from one person than easy 10, right?
And you'll be surprised how many people do have that much money and are willing to invest it. We have investors that lend us $300,000, $500,000, $200,000, and there's actually a strategy to find them, and they're out there.
Sounds like you got to be part of the mastermind,
right? How can people contact you?
So I have a website. It's called vincentesquire.com, or I'm on the internet. Or if you want to watch a video that we put together about syndication, it'll bring up a landing page that you put your email in, and you can watch a video of us talking about it for 45 minutes for a real estate project. So if that's interest to you, that's got all our contact information and stuff on it too. So, and yeah, thanks for having me on.